Hello guys, this is Panzer 36 and welcome to episode 1 of my new MQ&A series, Mahler's Questions and Answers. Basically this is a questions and answers show obviously, as well as a mini tutorial on request kind of thing, where if you have a question about really anything modeling related and you think I can answer it, or like a question about something I've done in the past on one of my videos, then you can ask it here in the comment section on this video. And then in the next episode I will try to answer the questions that were asked on the previous episode, which will be this episode's comment section. And then on episode 2, the questions that are asked on that one, then I'll answer them in episode 3, and so on and so on. And also, for mini tutorials on request, basically, if you have a question that's more like how to do a certain technique or how to use a certain product, if I have it on hand, then I'll try to do a quick demonstration here using an old kit. I'll probably just take an old kit out and like use it over the course of this entire series, and it'll slowly get like weathered to hell, but it'll be fun to see. And I can show you like all the little techniques you can do with whatever product you asked, or what products I can use to make whatever effect you asked. So with that out of the way, let's get into answering the questions that were asked recently. First of all, the Open Air Model Shop asked me how I can create how I make a photo booth to make my photos in. And this is it right here. As you might be able to see, this is a white t-shirt, 2 paperweights, and a kit box. And that's it. It cost me precisely $0, and it works very well. If I get this up properly, and then I don't have any folds on the t-shirt there, I can just kind of stretch it out. You know, I lower this one light down here so they're equal height and everything like that, and I just set the tank here and take photos from there, and it looks perfectly great because the background is basically flat white. And a lot of people I know use a piece of paper, like a big piece of paper, and they'll like drape it kind of with a curve to it. That works very well as well. But I don't have a piece of paper, so instead I use the t-shirt because it's what I have on hand. Yes, so that's a very, very cheap and basic way you can take decent photos. That's what I've used in the past, and I've been using recently, especially in my standard weather procedure video, as well as video thumbnails and stuff like that. This is just what I use, and it works very well, as you can see. So I don't know how to put the comments up. I want to be able to overlay them somehow, but I don't know how to do that right now. So basically I'm just going to kind of talk to them. So Zeta asked me basically what kind of kit I'd recommend for somebody that's new to the hobby. And I can just say, get a Tamiya kit. I have some here that I would say are really nice. Most of the 1/48 scale Tamiya kits are really, really good. This is the Crusader Mark 1 and 2. I've like mostly built this kit. These are kind of cool. They come with like a metal lower hull for some reason. But it's actually really cool because they're not really hard. They're very, very easy to build. Standard Tamiya kits are always like this. The instructions are really good, and then the tracks on most of these are the Lincoln length style. So you might be able to see here that basically instead of having individual links, you end up with like this huge length here which goes around the top, and then you have some shorter ones here, and basically you end up with segments that you have like for the straight parts, you'll have a big long piece, and then for the around the wheels you have like curved sections. And it looks really good. These kits are very, very easy to work with. Same thing with their 1/35 scale kits that are, well, even the new ones that they make are pretty good, but the old ones like this one, I think is from like the 70s. This one, and also the Panzer II Aus F/G are really, really good kits for a beginner because they are well engineered. Like as you can see, this is the upper hull. Basically everything's already on the upper hull. All you gotta do is like build the turret, put the wheels on, and a couple of details. There's 2 sprues plus the sprue with figures on this one, and then you got turret bottom and top, and then hull bottom and top, and 2 lengths of track, and you see like all the details that are kind of complicated are already on the tank. These kits, the instructions are like flawless. There's nothing really wrong with them. Tamiya decals are also really good. The only thing you really need to do is paint it. That's the only thing you might have any trouble with if you're new. So anything like this, I know that when I was starting up, the first kit I ever built was that Tamiya Panzer II F/G, and that was beautiful. I've actually built it a second time since, and I've got this kit as well, which is really good. Might build up soon. Probably take me about a day to do it because it's only like maybe like 100 parts in there at most. These 1/48 scale kits I've got, I think it's the only one I have, but it was really nice to build as well. And when I was starting up, I also built the Panther G from Tamiya, which is a very nice kit as well. The Panther, I think it's a Panther A kit. It's kind of bad in some ways. There's like some issues with it. I think there's like fit issues or dimension issues that are kind of weird and make it not accurate. I'm not sure if that's a problem with also building it, but the Tamiya Panther Aus G is a really good kit as well, so I'd recommend that. Do not do the thing that I did, which was start a Dragon Smart Kit as your second kit ever. Don't do that. I had lots of fun with it, but it was kind of hard. So something like a Tamiya kit, 1/48 scale or 1/35 scale, is really good for a beginner. Next question is by Sergeant Bones. He asked me basically how I would recommend he weather a Panzer grade tank using not oil paints. So I'm going to go over just a standard process I'd recommend instead. On this tank I use these products here, which are just oil paints. I got a bluish one, a black, a dark brown, and a kind of like grayish brown color. And I kind of did I guess highlights, shadows, as well as a overall discoloration, modulation kind of effect. I didn't really go into streaks and things like that. I did a little bit, but not really. And he's asking basically how he could do something like that using enamel products. So first of all, if your tank is entirely Panzer gray, instead of going over with little bits of blue to get kind of like a bluish hue in the gray areas, you can just do an entire blue coat over it using a filter. So if you have a Sin Industries by MIG Productions filter, or a Wilder filter, or basically any company's filter for Panzer gray, it's always going to be blue. You can use that, and then that'll give a kind of bluish hue to the tank, which makes it a little more interesting and kind of replicates what Panzer gray actually was, which is a little bit bluish of a gray. Next up, he asked how I'd recommend he do kind of like streaking, things like that. He mentioned that he usually uses a dot filter technique using AK Interactive products on a camouflage tank, but on a Panzer gray tank he's not exactly sure. And I would say you do the exact same thing. Just dot filter with like grays and greens or whatever color of streaking effects you have, and then you just kind of do the standard process. Wet a brush if you have one. Here's a flat one. You kind of wet it with a little bit of thinner, and you can kind of do the overall dot filter technique using dots of enamel product instead of dots of oil paint. That works perfectly fine, and that'll give you kind of like modulated effects on there, in the same way you kind of get them on the camouflage pattern. That'll kind of make the Panzer gray finish, which is usually a little bit boring. It'll make it a little more interesting overall because you'll get those modulated effects in there. And you can also, if you want a little more, you can also do color modulation during the airbrushing stage, so do a little bit of highlights and shadows using lighter grays and darker grays. Overall, things like that will make your Panzer gray finish a lot less boring. The next question is asked by Lance Corporal Cook. He asked me how I'd recommend he does camouflage, foliage camouflage on a tank. And this is something that happened in real life. Basically, the crew would take like a big piece of a tree and break off a branch and put it on the tank, and it makes it like a bush. And that kind of gives some camouflage. So I've done that in the past with the model kits, and I'll go over it right now. So in the past, what I've done with camouflage, foliage camouflage kind of thing is using this product here. It's Woodland Scenics Fine Leaf Foliage. This is the olive color. Basically, it's a thing meant for model railroading, I'm pretty sure, or something like that. Basically for dioramas, and it's just a big, huge clump. It comes in like a big clear box of kind of like sticks, and then you get smaller branches in there. It's all kind of connected as one big piece, and you can kind of just break out sections. And then you kind of end up with things that look like trees when you break off things around the stem, obviously, and then you have like the larger bits on the top of just leaves. But I break it off into very, very small pieces or things like that, and then I just kind of like stick it on the model. And as you can see, here's a nice little bit, and I've got like a branch on the bottom that make it look like it's part of a tree that the crew's actually stuck on the tank. I've just stuck them on there with some white glue, nothing fancy. And I did a little bit of dry brushing with some light green acrylic paint, just gently over the top of there. And then I stuck them on, and I did a dull coat finish at the end, and overall, it looks like little bits of tree the crew stuck on there for foliage camouflage. It's very basic. That product is actually pretty cheap. I'm pretty sure it's like, at least in Canada where I come from, it's like $12 for a box that is big. You can probably do like 50 foliage camouflage tanks with it. It's a big box. It comes with a ton of that product, so it's really good. You can also probably try something more like what people actually do in model routing for trees, where they kind of like use a dead root and then they start to like apply leaves to it and things like that. That's probably a little more complicated. Might look a little more detailed, but I think this actually looks great because the foliage and like the leaves that are very, very small, it does look pretty in scale, I think. I like it a lot. That's what I'd recommend you use. This is the olive color of the Woodland Scenics Fine Leaf Foliage, by the way. Dan H. had a question about how I would do individual length or link and length tracks, leaving them removable for the painting and weathering stages. Now, my standard procedure for this is to leave them in sections. So this Bradley example, I haven't done the top piece yet, but when I do, it's going to be separate from the bottom piece. And then the wheels are also separate as well, so what I can do is I can basically just pop this piece off. Because when I glued it all together, I glued the track links together and then stuck it on when it was still wet, and then it hardens in place, but it's not glued to the wheels. So that way, I can just pop it off like that, paint it, weather it separately, and then when it's all done, I can just kind of stick it on at the end. And then I can also feed the top length of track in, which will be separate, but they'll kind of like wedge it in there and glue it together. One thing to note though, is if you have fenders that might get in the way, you should leave them off. For example, this one has the fenders that go in the front there. I've left them off because I need to be able to feed the top piece of track in there, kind of like this. I'll just kind of have to wedge it in there, and then that'll sit in and cover the top piece. And then basically, if I glue the fenders on, I'm not going to be able to get in there, and then I'm kind of screwed. So if you leave it in sections like this, Sometimes I'll even leave in 4 pieces, probably the top piece, the 2 kind of like curves there, and then the bottom piece separate, and that way just kind of like, when it's in more pieces, it's easier to work with because you have more kind of like working space. You can kind of just bend it a little bit as well. And also sometimes you might end up having to remove a piece of track. I don't know why, but sometimes when you put it back on, you have 1 piece of track too many, and I don't know, but just be careful like that. And if you do it in sections, glue them all together and stick them on the model, but not glue them to the model, and then let them dry and then pop them off. That'll really help because then you can actually just paint them and weather them separately and things like that. And then when you put on the tank at the end, it looks great. Polish Mafia 15 asks how I store my old model kits that are built and also how I tend to any dust that gets on them. Now here I'll show you is my kind of like build kit area. Basically it's 2 IKEA D12 cabinets. I've got another one somewhere, but it's not built and I'm going to need it soon because I'm running out of space. This is a clear glass multi-level cabinet system that you get from IKEA. Not very expensive and very easy to put together. You know, it's IKEA, so it's basically like a Tamiya kit, but a shelf. And you see there's plenty of space in there. Basically I can fit like at least four tanks on every single shelf. It's pretty big. And it's all clear so you can see through it all pretty well. You can also get those lights to put in the top there. They come separate, but they're meant for this. There's already a hole in the cabinet. I'll show you the doors here. They're magnetic and they open and close like that, so that's pretty good. Overall, it's great. I see lots of people using these when they're on their bench videos on YouTube or on Facebook. You always see like 10 of these across the back of their man cave. Very popular. A lot of people use them, and I'd recommend you try them. If I ever get any dust in there, I just take a big, flat, soft brush, kind of like what I use for pigments, just kind of like gently brush over the model, avoiding areas where there's pigments anyways, but never get too much dust in there anyways, so it's okay. They're pretty well sealed. There's only like a little bit of a gap around the sides of the door, so it's pretty good. This is what I recommend you buy, and this is what I have. If you can get your hands on any of them, it's IKEA. You can probably find it somewhere. They're a great idea. And now for the final question answered in this episode. This was asked by both Doug's Chronicle and Haladin. They were asking what my airbrush setup is, and more specifically, Haladin asked what my kind of setup is and why I think I do a bad job with airbrushing and say I'm no good at it, even though I end up with good results in the end. Mainly, well, I'll go for my setup here. First, I have a standard single tank compressor, like the very basic airbrush compressor that basically everybody has. That's the standard one you can buy on the internet anywhere. My airbrush itself, though, is this Pash, I think it's what it's called, VL0212, which is a fairly basic double action airbrush. You know, you can actually control the amount of air and paint going out of it. It's about 4 years old now. I've had this since I started up. Actually, I had it before I started doing tanks, back in my model railroading days. And when I first had it, I did a really crappy job cleaning it out. And the inside, I know the paint cup is horrible, but it's all, in the inside it's pretty well clean. But still, there's some areas inside there where I just can't get the paint out. And overall, things like that, as well as my just lack of skill in general, and kind of dislike for airbrushing, also makes it not really fun for me. I don't enjoy it. It's kind of just a pain for me. Like, I prefer building and weathering. Painting with the airbrush is not really ever fun. I don't know why, I just don't like it. I've never been proud of the results I've got immediately. Mainly like things like overspray and stuff like that. I did a really good job with the camouflage in this one. But the reason why I don't say I'm good at it and don't like the results, even though I get good results in the end, is because, as I said, I don't really enjoy it. And also I do end up with overspray, but I manage to usually kind of get rid of that with the filters and all the oil effects I do later, which kind of tones that down. Because it's not fun for me, I don't enjoy it, and I don't strive to get better at it really, because I just kind of do it and I'm like, yeah, I'll just paint it. And then move on to the weathering, which is actually the fun bit for me. So because of things like that, that's why I don't say I'm good at airbrushing, even though I do often get some decent results. But if you notice, most of my tanks are like a single color camouflage, just like yellow or gray, with a basic camouflage pattern like this one. That's because I'm not good at doing fine lines or anything like that. Some like later war camouflage patterns or German ones, you see like really fine squiggly lines in there. I cannot do that with this airbrush. I cannot get lines that tight, or I cannot really get that close in without having the paint run, because I'm not really experienced enough, because again, I don't really enjoy airbrushing. So this is basically as thin a line as I can get, kind of like there with the green and stuff. But overall, airbrushing, it's a thing. I'm not really that good at it, as I said, but I do kind of have to do it to get onto the next step, which is weathering. So I kind of just get it over with. But I do want to get better at airbrushing in the future, and we'll see how it goes in there. But yes, my airbrush setup is a basic compressor, a fairly basic double action airbrush that I've done a crappy job cleaning in the past couple of years. Not really careful with that, of course, but it's still kind of not that great because of the crappy job I've done it. So it doesn't spray perfectly, and that combined with my skills makes it not exactly the best thing for me in the hobby. So that's why I don't enjoy airbrushing very much, and that's why I say I'm not good at it, even though I do often get some decent results. So that wraps up this episode of the MQ&A show, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments about how we could improve this series, or you also want questions or comments answered in the next episode, then please feel free to post them in the comment section of this video, and I'll go through and look at them, as well as maybe look back at the ones asked in the previous episode, because there were still some pretty good ones that didn't get to fit in this video. But if you guys see a comment in the video that you want answered, then give it a thumbs up, and if a comment has like 5 or 6 likes or something like that, then I'll know that people want that answered, and of course then I'll go through and kind of like give that one a priority, I guess. So yeah, I don't really know how this series is going to turn out. If you have any questions about basically what I do in the hobby, about kits in the hobby that I've built, or products that I use, or anything like that, then you can ask them my opinion on them, or how to use them, or how the kit was to build and things like that. Then I will actually, if I can, I'll do a quick demonstration of the product or anything like that. I've got a bunch of like AK Interactive Wilder MIG paints and things like that. So again, thanks for watching very much, and I hope you enjoyed it. This is Panzer 36, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.